Hi all, I'm going to get this going. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle Pasula-Kugler. I'm the Director of Aftercare and Community at Wasabi Ventures Stables, and I'll be running this webinar tonight. In addition to myself, we have a couple co-hosts, and remember, if you're a co-host, I have muted you. You can unmute yourself because I have muted the entire group trying to help with the noise level. So in addition to myself, we have TK Kugler, who's the founding partner, also happens to be my husband, so he can say hi if he unmutes himself. Or not. Oh, there he goes. TK, we can't hear you.
So, hi everyone. So for once, I'm going to try to be silent during an entire presentation. And for those that know me on this call, that is nearly flipping impossible. So, but I'm gonna give it a good shot here and let other smart people talk.
Thank you. All right. In addition to TK, we have Christy Craven. So Christy, I'll let you give a quick intro before we get into the nuts and bolts of this. And you are muted, so.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay. I was having a lot of technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
And Christy has been a club member since almost the very beginning, I believe.
Yeah, I think there was maybe 8 or 9 of us when I joined. It was a very small group.
Yeah.
And we were predominantly Maryland-based. It was mainly around my local area. I think there was a few up in like Pennsylvania, but it was a lot smaller than it is now.
Yeah, for sure. We also have a newer club member, Joe Skirdo. So Joe, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Michelle. Joe Skirdo from the Minnesota Racehorse Engagement Project. I got involved with Wasabi Ventures more as a test drive to find out a little bit more about them, and was so impressed that they've become a primary partner with us here in Minnesota and at Canterbury Park for the upcoming racing season. So thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're supposed to also have Brian Leckie. I don't see his name listed, but I'm just going to do a little shout out in case Brian is on here, but using a phone number, so I wouldn't recognize him. All right, no. So we're just going to get going on this and talk about, the whole purpose of this is hoping to get people who are not in the club to be able to show up tonight and hear firsthand from our club members, why they are part of our club, what they like about our club. So, and I think it's kind of great that, between Christy and Joe, we have people. Christy's been with us for, over 3 years now, and Joe's been with us just a couple months, So we'll start with the first question of, how did each of you hear about Wasabi Venture Stables? And I'm going to start with Christy just because, there wasn't a lot about us then. So how did you hear about us, Christy?
So I heard about the club from a friend on Facebook. I don't have a lot of physical local horse racing friends, fans that I get to go to the track with, but I'm on a lot of Facebook groups for like racing and stuff, and that's where I first heard about it. And I was kind of searching for, I'd been in more traditional partnerships before, and it kind of was left lacking what I was kind of, the experience that I was looking for. So I was really intrigued when I heard about this because it was totally different from anything I had ever heard before. And there's been a couple now that are kind of, I think TK should have probably like patented it or something, because there's a couple now that are kind of doing the same thing. But I figured I'd give it a shot. I mean, it was really a very small financial risk compared to anything else in horses. So that's how I found out, was I think through one of the local Facebook groups.
Awesome. Well, sounds like a great place to start. How about you, Joe? So you came in later, and obviously you're engaged with horse racing, but how did you come to find Wasabi Ventures?
Well, Michelle, I started looking around for different partnerships that were available within the industry, just not only for myself, but for what we're doing here in Minnesota. So our goal with the group that I represent is really to get people involved in racing and in ownership. And so we were looking for groups such as Wasabi to get involved with. And the thing I really liked was the fact that not only was it a flat investment that people can get in, so they knew exactly what they were getting in for, but also a group that was highly communicative. So there was educational aspects of what you guys did, as well as a community that was built up around your owners, which I think if you're going to get into racehorse ownership, those are a couple really strong things. You want to get involved to learn on this level. You want to get involved because you get to meet people, share ideas, maybe eventually form your own partnerships. So it kind of checked all the boxes as far as what we were looking for to partner up with a group, a professional group that was going to race here in Minnesota.
Awesome. And I understand that I am the wife of the person who founded this business, but that doesn't necessarily mean that in a marriage you have to help each other with grow your company. So my own personal story is, I don't want to go too far back, but I'm from New England, so I didn't grow up around horse racing. I don't have a family that's into horse racing. And when I met TK 15 years ago, he thought we should take our children to the track. And I told him there was no way I was taking children to such a despicable place. And obviously over the past 15 years, I figured out that the racetrack really is a pretty great place. And I love the animals and the people involved in it. And so when he started to build this, I thought, well, I'll help minimally. And I have to tell you that the community and the horses are really what make me spend, I'd say, half of my work week working on Wasabi Ventures stables. I love the interaction. We've got people in, I counted the other day, I think we're in 30 states. And we come together and we connect over horses and the sport. And then there are these friendships. And I just think it's amazing that we have this club that's so dedicated to the animals in this industry. And it makes me want to work even harder to make it bigger and accessible to more people. So that's, why I am here. So, so we know how you end up here. Christy, you've stayed with our club. I mean, we, like any business, you do have some people who come in and they buy a couple horses and then maybe they aren't as active or whatever, but you've been consistently here. You've been consistently active on Slack, a fabulous cheerleader on social media, and a person who's continued to buy into horses. What is it that's made you want to stay and be part of this community?
I think the biggest thing for me was the consistency to what was said was going to be done and what actually is done. There have certainly been some growth curves when, you go from 7 or 8 people to, how many are there now?
450, 500.
So there's a few more. There's a few more people. And there were some things where like TK and you had to think on the fly of like, okay, well, how are we going to accommodate, no, not everyone can go to the paddock now. We can't put 400 people in the paddock. So, but it's always been true to the original mission, which has been to be transparent, to really, kind of roll back the doors on an industry that's not very open sometimes to people and not very forthcoming. And there's a lot of times that you see partnerships advertised and they promise you the sun and the moon and they don't even give you the stars. They charge you for the stars, but they don't give them to you. So it's been really nice to see the way that even though it's expanded so much, it still stayed true to that original, concept of being able to be really involved in a racing partnership or in racing in general, and having that transparency still, and staying true to, it's not like you got to 100 people and then you were like, well, now the buy-in's going to be $200, or well, this horse is now going to be, you can only buy this percent. It's been pretty consistent. And so, for me, I mean, and you have to keep in mind, I own my own brood mares and racehorses outright. So, but this partnership still appeals to me, even someone that has that access to the industry, because of it's set it and forget it. Like, you get to be a part of this great, really cool thing running at tracks everywhere for like no money. And you get to meet all of these people. And I think Slack has been the biggest piece of it to me, for me personally, because I don't have a lot of friends locally that I talk racing with. I have a handful, but you can log on to Slack and we can talk about, the Derby's postponed and when's Preakness going to be, and people talk about handicapping and we talk about wine and we talk about everything. And unlike a lot of social media platforms, people are generally really nice. Like, we don't have problems of people coming in and being nasty to each other. I think we're all really supportive. Nobody is rude when somebody asks, a question that, oh, everybody else would know that. So I think the community of it and the transparency of it is really what has kept me.
Yeah, I might be biased, but I agree with you. I mean, as I said, I'm not a horse person at all, I guess. But I found Slack to be this wonderful place where I can learn from others. I can ask questions. And like you said, I don't feel too silly for asking things. And the club is generally supportive and great and providing the information that I need. So I agree. Now, Joe, I know you said you were purposely looking for clubs for Minnesota. And I saw your note about Andrew. I'm going to introduce him later. So what was it that you liked about Wasabi, that you would encourage? I mean, we're working with you right now in a partnership to try and get people in Minnesota. And we have some Minnesota club members. I think we've had about 10 join since December who are very excited for Canterbury to begin and for us to have horses there. And some have even bought horses in other locations because they just can't wait and understand we're pretty good about communicating and that they can see it from a distance. So, but as I said, enough about us. Why don't you tell me what you liked when you found us?
Well, one other thing that I just noted, because I forgot to say it earlier, was your aftercare efforts. Part of what we're doing is, our mission is to engage people with racehorses, both active and retired.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that Wasabi has is, and I know you had this up, and I'm sure you can talk even in more detail than what I can, but the fact that Wasabi is now working on a program that basically you're taking the racehorse from birth all the way into their second careers and to their retirement. And I think with the people that we've talked to that are interested in racehorse ownership, that's become really important. I've owned horses for 20 some odd years, and nobody really used to ask what happens to the horse when it's done racing. But I can tell you now, that's probably the second or third question that I get from people who are interested. So the fact that Wasabi actually has a plan, works to place the horses that come out of the stable, I think is something that's very attractive to me and will be attractive to the people that are interested in getting involved.
Yeah, and we've always been concerned about horses when they're done running, what happens to them. We, work with the tracks and their OTTB programs to make sure that they get put into good hands. But last year, somewhere in the summer, I launched our official aftercare campaign that Joe referenced. We had another incident where everyone was fine, but we had a jockey that got injured, and the club had this outpouring of generosity, and it was a light bulb moment for me. If we have a club that wants to support a jockey who on his very first run for us got injured, well, they're going to want to support our horses. So if you're new to our club, what we do is anytime we have a horse leave our stable, whether it's through retirement or claiming or private sale, if it's a positive outcome and you get money back, I ask, and it's voluntary, you can donate $5 to our aftercare program, and then that sum for that horse is given to the program at the track at which the horse last ran. And so what was really amazing is Just Give Me a Kiss, we retired her from Penn National to become a broodmare, and still club members wanted to donate money. And so a new startup at Penn got a check for, I forget the amount, but the woman there was just bowled over. No one does this. And I've tried shouting it from my microphone, and we've gotten a little bit of attention, but I really want people, I don't want kudos, but I want people to know how awesome our club is, that people would donate money for a horse that, it's not even going to truly impact a horse. It's going to help another horse, but it's a true sense of generosity. And I'm just so proud to say that I work with these club members. So, yeah.
I was going to say, I couldn't agree more. And one thing you'll find out when you come to Canterbury in Minnesota, Canterbury's had a program for, I don't know exactly how many years. Andrew might be able to answer that later, but the racetrack puts up $8 per start, as well as the owner puts up $8 per start every time a horse races. That goes into a fund that's used for the repurposing and retirement of these horses that leave the track at Canterbury. And that's also matched by other funds within the state. So it's been a high priority in Minnesota. And I think having you look at that aspect of racing and being so engaged with it really helps, I think, with this partnership, why it's going to be so successful here in Minnesota. as well as successful as it's been across the country.
Yeah. And Andrew put a note up. It's been 13 years that Canterbury has done it. And I believe almost all the tracks we run at have a similar program. And Christy might be able to speak to it. I want to say Maryland is $7 per start that they donate.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And I know Penn does it, and I'm pretty sure Oaklawn does it. TK, if you want to chime in at this point. TK, we can't hear you.
I'm glad I was given permission to jump in there. So, an interesting those were all correct. One interesting thing of what Oaklawn does is that they actually, starting this year, they take 0.5% of the claiming price every time a horse is claimed, and then add that to the bucket. And if you don't know anything about Oaklawn and claiming, it's not unusual for 15 or 20 horses to get claimed every single card at Oaklawn. It's a very active claiming environment, so the dollars kind of add up over time.
All right. Before I open this up to questions for the club, I did want to introduce, or Joe, if you want to introduce Andrew. Andrew is part of the Minnesota program as well, so I didn't know if he had some more insights to share.
Definitely. There's probably a couple more things he can talk about, because I believe Canterbury is instituting a claiming tax as well that's going to go to OTTB, so he can talk about that. And the other thing is that Canterbury was one of the first racetracks to ever have a racing club, and that has been highly successful for years. And this, I think the Wasabis and different groups are a nice outcrop of what had started maybe a decade ago and now is becoming so much more professional, accessible, and communicative. I think that's a plus. But Andrew Offerman's the VP of Canterbury Park. He's the person I work with most directly at Canterbury, along with the horse persons organizations and the Thoroughbred and Breeders Association as well. And certainly he can answer any questions you might have for people specifically about Canterbury, or even the racing industry in general, because Andrew's been in the business for a while. He's a graduate of the racetrack industry program in Arizona. And I appreciate the fact that he's joined us today.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate the opportunity to talk. As Joe mentioned, I've been at Canterbury Park this is year 15, and we're excited to work together with this group. Joe is leading the Minnesota Racehorse Engagement Project for us, and Canterbury Park has done a lot of unique things over time in terms of fan education. As Joe mentioned, we were the first racing club that was run by a racetrack, and we did a lot with that group at a really small investment level. And what we really kind of realized after, I think, 12 years in that program is we really needed a step to take people to the next level, to kind of get out of our little bubble and see what else we could do for the industry. So Joe's stepped up and is leading that charge to help us find some of the people that can really help kind of blow up this initiative and do a lot more with it, more than just advertising to our little bubble, but advertising to the state at large and kind of the industry on a wider spectrum. And we're excited to kind of see where it goes. We've had a robust racing club with between 150 and 200 members for, like I said, over a decade. And we're looking forward to seeing what we can do to help them continue to gain their knowledge, but also grow that pool of people, create more of a social aspect, and then hopefully, like you guys are doing, introduce some of the technology and some of the communication tools into that group to see what else we can do to build a larger network and really, acknowledge that without owners, there really is no sport. And our HPPA has been great for a long time at helping us fund these efforts. And with Joe leading it, we're excited to see what we can do in Minnesota and what other kind of unique initiatives we can take on with Joe leading this program.
Great. So what I'm going to do at this time, and usually this works, there are 22 of us on this call. If you have a question, if you want to unmute your microphone and just ask it, we'll try that. And if more than one person speaks, you can kind of figure out a pecking order. And feel free to ask questions of me, Christy, Joe, Andrew, TK. We'll let TK talk. And, if you're not a member and things you want to know about the Stables Club. Jenny Brown shared that the fact that aftercare took up a big part of this call is a testament to what great people, are part of this organization, the kind of people I like to associate with. Thanks, Jenny. Anybody have any questions for us? People who are considering joining that would like to know about specific programs or ownership? All right, it's quiet at the moment. As director of community over the past couple of years, I've worked to, especially as the group has grown, it was like Christy said, when it was 8 people, it was pretty easy. TK and I would fly to Baltimore, we'd meet at a racetrack, we meet at Laurel and watch a race together. And now with 450, that's a little bit tricky. It says, okay. So we have switched to doing a lot more online things. We'll start promoting it tomorrow, but next Wednesday, we're belatedly celebrating our first win day. Our first win happened on February 26, 2017. A horse named Slick William won a starter allowance claiming, I'm forgetting, a race. And he put us on the map with a first win. And so we should have celebrated in February due to mismanagement. I did not plan it in time, so we're holding it a month delayed, and we hand out a Slick William award to the horse that our club decides has the most hearts. And then we'll be running a quick social media promotion next week, giving away 1 club membership to someone new, and then someone within our club is going to win a prize also. And so we do things like that. We buy yearlings, and we have our own broodmares, but when they are 2, we do our own naming process. Right now we're in the process of naming one of our 2-year-olds, and anyone in the club is eligible to submit names, and then if you're an owner, you get to vote on them and help choose what these 2-year-olds will be named. So just a couple of the fun things we do. And TK is now telling me I have questions. So Joe wants to know, if I would become a new owner, what is the basics involved with joining the group? So the first part is you would register to become a club member. There's a $25 fee with that. And then you are part of our club. You have access to Slack, all of our communication tools. As a club member, you can show up at the races. And if we have a winner, you're welcome to the winner's circle, whether that's your horse or not. And then as far as actually owning a horse, it's, when you see a horse that you like or that fits your budget, you can buy as small as a 0.5%. There's a $99 fee, and then the 0.5% is exactly what it is. It's 0.5% of the cost of the horse, including taxes. And then that's it on the pricing. There are no future bills on race horses. And when the horse either leaves the club or is retired, we do a settlement. And if it was positive, you get money back. And if it wasn't positive, there are no bills. We eat the difference here at Wasabi Ventures. And Joe, if you want to let me know if that answered it fully, just feel free to either unmute yourself or type some more. So George wants to know if I can link the webinar. Yes, I am recording this, so we'll share the link tomorrow, George, and then you're welcome to post it to your Facebook group. Oh, and Lauren answered that. And then Joe wants to know, TK, can you talk a bit about people who eventually want to form their own partnerships and how you help? So TK, this is all you. TK, not hearing you.
It's a great question, Joe. It's one of the things that probably makes us more unique than any other syndication that I know of, that I've seen in the industry. And what we call these graduates, and what we allow people to do, I mean, you could do it on your own, but we want people to come to our program. We consider our program sort of that easy entry point, because it takes a lot of risk out of it. We give a lot of education, and I am not building Wasabi Ventures to lock people down. It's not the goal. I actually want people, if they can and have the ability and the interest, to actually graduate from us and go out there and own their own racehorses. We actually have had, by my last count, I think 11 people who had never owned a racehorse who started with us and then went out and graduated from us and did their own thing. Some people, in the cases of like Christy, they don't leave us. It's not like, oh, you never are going to do business with us again or be a part of any of our group. They just go out and incrementally do their own thing on top of it. So we call it graduation. So for graduates, and we give a couple paths here. For example, we let people buy 20% of a horse and get their name listed. We help them find ways to get their own silks created. So we basically layer in all of the pieces that you have to do to become your own owner on your own. And then we do horses with those graduates in some cases. So that's one path. We have people that then take the graduate program and go even a step further and start buying their own horses with their new sets of silks and their new licenses, and that's just usually an awesome thing. We have one gentleman who was one of our early people who had joined the group, and he's still very active. I talked to him just the other day, actually, on Slack. But he now has a whole string of broodmares that he bought. And he had never owned a racehorse of any kind before he joined us. And he attributes a lot of what we've done to sort of give them that education. So we really, like I said, I'm not trying to build something at Wasabi where we're going to lock people in and please don't leave. I want the sport to grow, and to grow it, it's to get people to educate and find new levels for themselves, for sure. So hopefully that gave a picture a little bit, Joe. I'm sure, I know it was a rhetorical question because I know you've a leading question a little bit because we've talked about it. I think it's when I tell other racing people that we do that, it is probably the one biggest shocking thing to them, because so many people in this industry just kind of lock people in, and the last thing they want them to do is go off and do something on their own. We're just the opposite.
And TK, you don't need to mute yourself. I'm going to start answering this question, and you can chime in. Joe B asked, how do we decide which horse we'd like to buy? And I know a lot of it is TK and the trainers doing research, looking at the claiming books, watching hours and hours of race footage, determining, the perpetual value of this horse, the price of the horse, does it fit into our stable? I know Dawn started to answer it a little bit. So there are a number of factors, and I think what it comes down at the end of the day is a lot of human hours spent researching it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Michelle. And we're also a very unique operation now from the perspective of there are very few operations that go from birth to second career. So we actually have people that want to participate at the broodmare level. We have a stallion, so we have people that want to participate at the stallion level. So it's very interesting, and we give opportunities everywhere. So as far as which horse how do we choose them? I can tell you, I watch about 2 hours a day of horses running and past races around the country. We have a whole technology system that we built internally for tracking horses and when they're going to run next and when they're going to come up for claims. We also track, on the broodmare side. So our blood stock agent apprentice, Lauren Floyd, is on here, and gets to see some of that in action. I can tell you there in any given week, there's probably a dozen horses that we talk about that are possible for claims. So it's a long process there. And then not even to, dig into what we do at auctions. That's, we have a whole team that descends when it's time to do an auction. So it's a whole process there as well.
So I saw that Joe was also trying to understand if it's, how do club members decide which horses to buy also? So Christy, I'm going to let you answer first how you make your choice, and then I'm going to open it up to other club members that are on the call.
So I think, Don Walsh typed in the comments, and That's a lot of the way that I decide them too. You know, it's just like anything. So for me, I do tend to stick more to the Maryland horses because I can go see them run locally. That said, I have the 2-year-old filly in Florida. I was in on Thanks Mom, who was down in Florida. So some for me is location, but even if you're not close to a track, I would highly encourage you still to go in on a horse because you're still very involved. The other thing for me is, like Don also said, is like some, a pedigree that maybe you are super, you've been following, all of those horses. Maybe you're a fan of Big Brown and, this horse has, Big Brown connection, and that's a good way to pick a horse. TK is really good at getting a deal. So I will also tell you there are horses that I have picked because I think he's just made a really smart claim, and I don't care where they're running because I think they're going to do really well. So price, definitely factors in, but also, the value of going, okay, well, I think he snuck one by getting this horse at this level, and we can turn around and have a successful athlete. I did want to just share, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I don't know if it'll show or not.
Oh, you can kind of see it, but I know what you're trying to show.
I have I guess it's kind of a little too much glare, but I have all 6 of us or so in Slick Williams' win picture. And I can tell you that I cried in the winner's circle like a baby. And I think we were all shaking and in shock. That was I've loved horse racing my whole life. And that is the very first time ever, other than through sponsored events where I was in a club that sponsored something, that I have been in the winner's circle. So that was the neatest. I will remember that till the day that I die. Like, that was the neatest feeling.
So I'm going to steal the screen for just a second. I believe you should be able to see it now. That is the winner's circle photo for Slick William. And
that's all of us, look at our faces.
and as these things go, TK and I were not there. I think I have been in maybe 2 winner's circle for all the wins we've had. And I think TK is only a race or 2 ahead of me. So maybe it's good luck if we're not there, but it was a pretty awesome day. And I can tell you, we were cheering loudly from New Hampshire that day.
I'll jump in on the winner's circle thing. I've been a lifelong fan, and there are, I think I have been in exactly 5 winner's circles in my life, one of which I was a child, a baby, with my mom. So that's and it gets even worse at some level if you get it all superstitious. A number of times I have driven to Penn National, and where we were 3-5, 4-5, even money favorites, and we run second or third, and I do not get in the winner's circle picture. Mark Salvaggio has told me he does not want me to, he's our trainer there, he does not want me to come visit, because when we're like the shoe-in, we run second or third. So I've been told by Mark Salvaggio I'm not allowed to come because I'm like the kiss of death to get into the winner's circle. So I'm happy to stay at home is the real short answer. So.
And I know some of our club members have typed in the side, but if there's any club member that would like to share their reasons for buying horses, if they're different than Christie's or whatnot, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. Okay. How many horses do we currently, tracks do we currently bring horses to? We've run or have run, we've actually run up at Suffolk, which is now closed. We run in Pennsylvania, we run in Maryland, West Virginia, Florida, Arkansas. We've run in Indiana. We hope to run up in Minnesota this summer, Kentucky. What else am I missing? Our goal is to get up to also we're hoping to have horses in New Jersey at Monmouth this summer. A goal would also be to be in New York at some point. TK, am I missing any?
No, No, I think the way to look at it, and might help answer your question, Joe, is the way to think of these is a little bit in a regional type of way. It's kind of how horse racing works. So we're pretty active in the Mid-Atlantic area, and any horse that we have in the Mid-Atlantic area may run at any of the tracks that are in the Mid-Atlantic area. It's just kind of how the game works a little bit. Even if we have a horse right now that was, well, until the darn card canceled, that's actually based in Maryland, at the Maryland track, but was actually going to want to run at West Virginia before they canceled the card on Friday. And the horses kind of work in that regional sort of bucket. And then so we're there. We have a Florida sort of concentration. We're going to have a New York, New Jersey concentration for the summer as well, and then we're going to have an upper Midwest concentration as well this year. And who knows what's going to happen with Kentucky, and lots of things are moving parts right now, so it's kind of extraordinary times. But our plan right now, we have a growing string at Oaklawn. The Oaklawn meet, in theory, is going to end at the end of May. A good chunk of the horses that we have there are going to move up and probably be based at Canterbury. And then we have the other half of those are going to move to Monmouth and be based there. So we really have a split going there. And the ones that are at Canterbury, could run at Canterbury. They could run at Arlington. It just depends. You kind of got to run the horse where you can find the right race that it can win. That's just kind of how the game works a little bit. So I always tell people we try to be as honest and as forthcoming and as sort of vision forward as we can, because I know people want to be near where their horse is going to run, but sometimes these things in the game are just unpredictable. I mean, we had a horse yesterday or 2 days ago, I guess, that is an Arkansas bred. We entered the horse 6 times to get the horse to run in Arkansas, could not get the race to go, so it had to run at opening day in Oklahoma. It didn't make a lot of sense, but there wasn't any other choice for us. We just had to get the horse to a race. Wasn't what we wanted to do, but we wound up running at Will Rogers in Oklahoma a couple days ago. So sometimes those things just happen in this game.
If I can interject one thing as far as being involved and going back a little bit to what Christy said, wanting to be near the horses, that's one thing that we're really excited about, showing people that get involved with Wasabi and coming up to Canterbury, because it's really a unique venue from the standpoint they average probably 5,000 to 6,000 people a day, and 10,000 people are on site on the weekends, and that's without the big promotion days. So when you're an owner and you're hanging around the winner's circle watching your horse race, and you hear the crowd and so many people cheering and everything else, it really lends to the experience. I've owned horses, and I even make a joke. I worked my way into the winner's circle at Aqueduct once, and I felt so alone. And it's just a situation that, part of this ownership experience is also being in a crowd, being around a lot of people, feeling the excitement. And like Chrissy said, why she's involved in Maryland, and why I'm really excited when I look at that Wasabi map and I see, maybe a dozen little stamps in Minnesota. I'm looking for that to all turn green soon. And a lot of people enjoying that.
And to follow up on the whole community track thing, in our locations where we have a bigger amount of horses, we usually have a track ambassador. So we have one in Maryland, we have one in Pennsylvania, we have one in Florida currently, and they schedule monthly track visits, so they schedule that for Saturday, Friday night, depending on what track we're running at. And people come together. Sometimes they have lunch and they watch races together, hopefully have a horse running. And then once a quarter, we also do barn visits where you go early in the morning and you watch our horses train, and you get to meet some of the horses, feed them peppermints or carrots. We were supposed to do that down here in Arkansas this coming Friday, but with the state of the world, we have had to postpone that. And when TK and I come up to Minnesota, we'll do the same thing there, host some track visit and a barn visit, so that we can get some one-on-one time with people and the horses. So I know we had a question earlier about the status of a horse. I'm going to give that to TK really quickly, just because we're trying to talk about joining the club. But Kent had asked about Elmira. So TK, if you want to give a quick answer.
Yep. Yeah. Elmira is doing well. Actually is set up to, once again, a lot of things are in flux that are out of everyone's control right now, but actually is set to get entered tomorrow for a race this weekend. So assuming that race goes and, the world does not turn into the zombie apocalypse in the next, couple days, the plan there is that Elmira is actually going to make her debut for us this weekend on Sunday, actually, at Oaklawn. That is a horse. Honestly, I'll tell you this. This is a horse that when we claimed it, it came back, and we knew we were going to have to make some adjustments with the horse, just the way it had been running, and. I watched it work about a week ago before some of the craziness kicked in, and really she has made a drastic improvement in Johnny Ortiz's barn. I think you're going to see a horse make really a big step forward when you see her run next for us. Really, and a horse that's got a pedigree that's a very interesting pedigree on the back end of this. So it's a really interesting horse, and that is a horse that, if all goes well, is heading to Canterbury. I can never promise anything in this world. You really can't. I mean, the horse could wake up sick tomorrow and we have to retire it. It's just they're living, breathing creatures. But the plan, that is a horse that is targeted for Canterbury after the Oaklawn meet, just for anybody who that's an interest for them.
All right. Any other questions for us? It's 6:43. I mean, we can go till 7, but we do have a question. Hey, when you acquire horses for the group, are they primarily via claims, or do you go through auctions, private party, etc.? It's all of the above, Joe. So we definitely play the claiming game, which here at Oaklawn is tricky. We saw one the other week. I think it was a 19-way shake. But we do private sales. The 3 horses we just brought in, Proudly Fought, Rosafa, and Vegan Goes Best, were a private sale. And we have done auctions. We got 6 yearlings last fall. The 2-year-old sales this year, we'll see, depending on how full our barns are at that point. But we definitely, it's a mix of all 3 things. And now that we have broodmares and babies, in a couple of years, we'll have our own homebreds that will be running as well.
I just wanted to mention, Michelle.
Yes.
In terms of location too, now I did say I normally do buy the ones that are near me, but there's a lot of, Michelle and TK were at Oaklawn this year for a lot of the meet, and there's a lot of video and pictures and stuff from the trainer that you're still seeing and reading about the horse. I mean, I don't have a chance to get up to Pimlico, so I probably see the horses, the Florida horses and the Oaklawn horses as much as I see the ones that I'm in on, because I just don't have the time to go up, even though it's close to me. It does make it easier to sneak over for a race, but nobody can go to the races now anyway.
Right.
So, but you do have there's a lot of photography from, the trainers will take pictures, TK will take videos of morning works, George will take pictures of the foals. Everybody that goes out to the races, pretty much all the members, even if it's not their horse, we usually take pictures. Lauren's really good about taking shots of horses when she's up at Laurel. So you really, even if it's not a horse that's super close to you, or you don't have racing super close to you, I think you still feel really connected.
Thanks. I mean, I'd like to believe that, especially since for the first 3.5 years of this, TK and I were in New Hampshire. So, even when we weren't traveling, I'm so grateful for the club members that would put pictures on social media and Slack and, make it feel more live for me. And plus, with everything being online, being able to watch the races, from your laptop is amazing. So a couple comments from the thread. George said, being a racing fan from Maine with no live racing nearby anymore, have to agree with Christy that Slack has been a great feature. I've made many new friends there. I agree, me too. The handicapping channel and now the shared bets channel has been very active and fun. I personally am not a handicapper, but the activity there is amazing. A great size group of people who, especially now that most of us working from home, watching any racing they can and placing bets and talking about their handicapping strategies, wins and losses. So definitely there are those communities. And as Christy mentioned, we even have non-horse racing channels. We have a wine channel, a bourbon channel, food. So if you want to talk about other things, that's available. And then the beautiful thing, I know some people don't need that. You don't have to join those channels. So just because you're on Slack does not mean you have to be notified every 10 seconds. Joe has another question. With all the horses racing, how many trainers do we use? It goes up and down. I think we have about 6 or 7 right now. We have 1 in Florida, 1 in Virginia, 2 in Maryland, 1 in Pennsylvania, 2 in Arkansas. And, that will grow. And some of them will move. Our trainers that are in Arkansas, when the meet ends, will move on. And, if we have horses in Minnesota, we'll get a trainer there. So it kind of just matches the number of horses we have.
Yeah. And on the trainer side, I think it's important too to also understand this is a big change too from when we started. We have a full equine team, actually, really soup to nuts. You can't really cover, and some of them are on here. We have a director of stallions and breeding, George Adams, who's on the call. We have a director of racing, Adam Parker, who's in the woods somewhere trying to hide from the coronavirus. He's supposed to be on vacation. He's actually supposed to be on a cruise right now, and that didn't happen. So he's in the middle of the woods now, hiding with the animals, I think, at this point. But no, and then we have people who are part of the team. Like, I have farms now that I've spent time at and met people, because if you got to send a horse to a farm, we have farms where if we're going to go do a layup for a horse or give a horse a break, I have 4 farms around the country where I know, one, they keep our rates very, very low because we built relationships with them, and 2, I know they have the horse first in mind, the horse interest in mind first. So I mean, it's an entire team. We have a woman who is a young trainer, but she basically breaks our babies, when we take them from yearlings to 2-year-olds. But she's part of the team in Virginia, working at a training center. So all of those pieces go on top of the trainers that you see at the race track, who are based sort of at the end of a horse's racing career almost, but there's a whole team that gets them to that stage as well. It's one of the things that I've worked really, really hard on, honestly, over the last 3.5 years, is to make sure that that we're going to build a full lasting team. That's the only way to make this a sustainable story. So anyway, I just want to make sure that even beyond the trainers that that's it. I'll say one more thing about trainers, because trainers is like one of the questions that people always ask about. It's like the biggest question. And there's a lot of talk about trainers before the coronavirus took over the conversation. There was a lot of talk about trainers in the racing business because there was a lot of negative stories right before this. Believe it or not, that was only 9 days ago for those of you who are in the racing business, but it feels like forever ago. We intentionally pick trainers, by and large, that are early in their career, who specifically are hands-on, meaning they're not big names in most cases. They're in the barns every morning, and that they are really committed to our program and what we're doing. If you look across the board, our trainers tend to be fit that description, and then we catch them and grow with them. People like Johnny Ortiz, when we first started working with Johnny had won a damn race in forever. And catch lightning in a bottle and win some stakes races. And next thing you know, he's a hot young trainer. Well, he was a hot young trainer for us before he was a hot young trainer. And that really goes across the board. One of our very first wins, Beth Wharton, Gary Quill, who's on the line, really introduced Beth to me. I think the number was Beth she had lost 54 races in a row, and over like a year and a half period before we hired her as one of our trainers. But it was because I spent time with her and realized that she was hands-on. And the reason she hadn't won races because she hadn't got the right horses. And if you get the right horses for her, she can win races. And so anyway, I just wanted to make sure, because a lot of people cycle in on trainers and say, oh, you're working with a trainer who only wins 18% of the time. Why not get the trainer that wins 35% of the time? And I'm like, well, there's probably a lot of reasons why we don't do that. So anyway.
Yeah. The other thing, not really part of our team, but because of the aftercare work we've done, we have relationships with some of the retirement programs, which don't necessarily help us get our horses in faster, but we've definitely built a good name for ourselves. We have a horse, Thanks Mom, who retired through Beyond the Wire, and Beyond the Wire's placement service, and she's now up at Aikendale in New York. So I email with them on a fairly regular basis to check up on Thanks Mom, who's now a polo pony. And, I love when I hear from people like this. She tells me that she loves our horses, that working with Wasabi Ventures is great because, it's not only that we send a check, but that, we send them horses when they need to go. We don't wait until it's too long. So, they really are part of our program. I know that we have built good relationships with, I think, about a dozen programs now, and I keep growing it every month. I reach out to someone new to really, help make sure our horses are well cared for. Not only ours, all thoroughbreds when they're done with their racing career. Any other questions from the crowd? It's 7 of 7. I'm glad to keep this going, but I'm also glad to let everyone go. I know, I'm Central Time Zone. Sorry. For some of you, it's almost 8 o'clock. So,
could I say one more thing, Michelle?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to speak to what TK said about the trainers. That's also one of the things that really did attract me to Wasabi is TK always loves looking outside of that box, man. I don't even think TK has a box. And a lot of people probably would have looked at Beth and said, you're crazy. I think it had been 2 years since she had won a race, I think. It was close to when we won with Slick William. And it's to the point now that through the relationships, through Wasabi, getting to know her with Wasabi, I'm sending she's going to be training my personal racehorses because I really, like TK said, he finds the people that care, that put the hands on the horses, that, will do right by the animal. And I also wanted to mention, I think one of the really big things is that TK never pulls a punch and he never hides from a question. If you ever have a question about what a horse is doing, why a horse is entered into a claiming level that it is, why a horse isn't working, TK is not going to give you a BS answer and say, oh, we're working on it and we're training up to. He will tell it like it is, whether you want him to or not. And that's really important, I think, because communication has been a big issue with me in other partnerships. You don't ever, when the horse is entered to race and you get the bills, and that's kind of all you get. You don't get the behind the scenes. You don't get the, okay, well, we're scoping this horse to see and it came back with some mucus, or we feel like this horse could benefit waiting for the turf, or, you really get a lot of insight into why things are done. And that's just it's not done in any other partnership. And TK doesn't shy from questions. So if anybody's on the fence about wanting to join, I'm sure he would personally speak to you and answer any question you had, because he's not hiding anything from anyone, and he's got a lot of really cool ideas. So it'll be interesting to see where we go.
Well, thanks, Christy. Don Walsh says he learned more in 1 year in the club than he had in 15 years as a fan or better. So That's pretty impressive. Anybody else? I mean, I'm glad to keep this going for a couple more minutes, but I'm also glad to let everyone go to enjoy their evenings. Lauren says she's been involved with a half dozen other partnerships, and this is her favorite by far. Oh, you guys are the best. And it's Vanessa's favorite too. Wow, TK's gonna have a huge ego. I have to deal with him tonight, people.
Yeah. Well,
wait, we didn't say what you could be unmuted, Mr. TK.
Oh, okay. I'll go back to. I'm done.
No, you can wrap up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've thanks everyone. It's, I've said this a few times on Slack recently, especially. This has not been an easy thing we've tried to do at Wasabi, and my family has paid a great both a financial price and a time price to try to do what we've tried to do here. And and we do it because we love it. But honestly, I could have just as easily done the aspect of this and just bought racehorses and run this all on my own and just been an owner. But it wasn't the dream that I had. So I say that not because I need the applause, and honestly, even though I do have a big ego, I say that mostly because it really is the most rewarding thing when I hear those things and I get to read those things and I hear club members say those things. I had a club member just yesterday write to me and say that for 25 years he'd been trying to figure out how he could ever afford to own a racehorse, and he owns 15 racehorses with us. So, and he could have he owned 0 before us. There's nothing more heartwarming to know that you create a community where people really do enjoy each other's company and become friends when they would have never connected in life, and that it's something that has been very rewarding for us. And I thank all of you who are in the club, and I can't wait to have new folks join in as well.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to end this meeting. Thank you so much to Christy and Joe and Andrew for sharing. Thank you for everyone who participated with questions or in the chat. It's been a great evening, and I'm sure I'll see you all soon on Slack.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.